The discipline of staying. Chapter 1, when he says her name, it does not sound like a greeting, it sounds like a confession spoken too late. She keeps her back to him, hands braced against the cold marble counter, as if the room might tilt without warning. There are 20 years between them in that silence. She could turn around and end it. She could turn around and begin it. The kitchen clock ticks with unnecessary precision. She hears him take one step forward, then stop. The restraint is worse than movement. I wasn't sure you'd answer the door, he says. His voice is lower than she remembers. Or perhaps it is steadier. Time has pressed it flat, like paper left inside a heavy book. I almost didn't, she replies. Her voice does not tremble. That, at least, feels like a small victory. Outside, the wind moves through the trees in the back garden. The branches scrape lightly against the windows. It is early evening, the hour when things loosen their edges. I won't stay long, he says. She almost smiles at that. He has always misunderstood duration. You shouldn't be here, Daniel. The name lands between them with more force than she intends. She feels him absorb it. I know. He does not defend himself. He does not explain. That, more than anything, makes it harder to remain turned away. She closes her eyes briefly. The marble is cool beneath her palms. When she finally turns, she does it slowly, as if negotiating with gravity. He is thinner. His hair has gone almost entirely silver, though his eyebrows remain stubbornly dark. There are lines around his mouth she does not recognize. She has the disorienting sensation of seeing a stranger wearing the architecture of someone she once knew better than herself. You look well, he says. It is a polite lie. She appreciates it. So do you. Another lie. They let them stand. He remains near the doorway, hat in hand. He used to throw his hat on the nearest surface, careless with objects, certain of welcome. Now he holds it like something borrowed. You kept the house, he says. Yes. The answer is not simple, but she offers it without elaboration. His gaze moves around the kitchen. The same oak table. The same narrow shelves. The blue bowl with the thin crack near its rim. I didn't expect. He stops. What? I didn't expect it to feel smaller. It isn't. No, I suppose not. Silence again, not empty, dense. He takes another step forward. She does not move. I wrote to you, he says. I know. You never answered. I know. He exhales through his nose, a contained sound. I thought you might at least tell me not to come. I assumed you wouldn't. That lands. She sees it. He studies her face, not hungrily, not even tenderly, as if searching for a verdict. You've changed, he says. Of course I have. That isn't what I meant. She folds her arms, defensive without meaning to be. Then what did you mean? He considers this. He has always been slow to precision, quick to impulse. That, too, has altered. You seem finished, he says quietly. The word stings more than accusation would have. Finished? Settled, he corrects. Contained. She thinks of the years after her husband's illness, the long corridors of hospitals, the quiet house that followed, the careful routines she constructed to keep herself from dissolving. Containment can be a form of survival, she says. I never doubted your strength. You doubted plenty. Yes, he does not argue. It disarms her. The kettle on the stove begins to hum faintly. She turns it off, though it has not yet boiled. Why now? She asks. The question has been waiting since the moment she heard his voice through the door. He sets his hat down on the table. The gesture feels like a decision. I'm leaving, he says. For where? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. That surprises them both. He looks at her carefully. I've sold the firm, he says. The house as well. She absorbs this. The firm had been his second marriage. The house his apology to a future that never arrived. You're unmoored, she says. Yes, and you thought of me. Yes. There it is, unvarnished. She walks to the window, putting distance between them without turning away again. The garden is overgrown. She has let it be. You forfeited the right to think of me in this way, she says. I never stopped. That isn't noble. I know. The admission softens something she does not want softened. Is she dead? She asks. He understands the question. No, we separated years ago. And you didn't think to tell me. You asked me not to. Her hand tightens around the edge of the curtain. I asked you not to write, she says. That isn't the same. It felt the same. She turns back to him. You don't get to rewrite history because it's more comfortable, she says. His jaw tightens, a familiar sign of temper, though he keeps it contained. I am not here to rewrite anything, he says. I'm here because there are things that were never said. And you believe they need to be? Yes. Why? He hesitates. For the first time since entering the house, he looks uncertain. Because I am tired of carrying them alone. The honesty is almost unbearable. She studies him. The man who once asked her to leave everything for him. The man she refused. You made your choices, she says. So did you. Yes. The word hangs heavier than the others. He steps closer now, not close enough to touch. Close enough to feel the heat of him. I never understood, he says softly. Not really. What? How you could look at me the way you did and still walk away. The memory rises unbidden. A train station, rain, a hand not taken. I didn't walk away, she says. I stayed with him. Yes, he nods. A small movement. Acceptance without peace. Did you love him? He asks. The question is not cruel. It is careful. Yes, she says. He absorbs that. She sees the effort. Differently, she adds before she can stop herself. He closes his eyes briefly. The smallest victory flickers across his face. Not triumph. Recognition. I loved her too, he says. I assumed. But not like that, she exhales slowly. We are too old for this, she says. For what? For comparisons, for measuring what might have been. He considers that. I'm not measuring, he says. I'm accounting. The distinction unsettles her. The clock continues its steady ticking. The world outside the kitchen remains indifferent. You said you wouldn't stay long, she reminds him. I won't. Good. He looks at her then with something dangerously close to amusement. You always did prefer clean exits, he says, and you never understood how necessary they are. A pause. Is that what you call what happened? He asks. Yes, he shakes his head. It felt like abandonment. The word lands with quiet violence. She does not flinch. It was preservation, she says. For whom? For everyone. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. They stand there, two people balanced on the thin edge between accusation and confession. He moves to the table and rests his hands on its surface, the same gesture she made when he first spoke her name. She notices and hates that she notices. I thought, he says slowly, that if I saw you again, it would be easier. She almost laughs. On what evidence? None. He looks up at her. It isn't easier. No, he studies her face with a tenderness he does not attempt to disguise. You are still the only person who ever frightened me, he says. Why? Because you see through me. She shakes her head. I saw what I wanted to see. That's not the same. Silence settles again. Softer this time, more dangerous. She becomes aware of how close they are standing. Daniel, she says quietly, yes, if you've come to ask me for something, don't. His gaze sharpens. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Good. I'm not asking you to leave with me. Her breath catches despite herself. I wouldn't, she says, I know. The certainty unsettles her more than a plea would have. Then what are you asking? He steps back, as if granting her space to breathe. I wanted to see if it was still there, he says. What? He does not answer immediately. He lets the silence shape the word. Us. The simplicity of it nearly undoes her. There is no us, she says. He nods slowly. That's what I needed to know. And? He looks at her for a long moment. Long enough that the air shifts. And I don't believe you. The statement is not triumphant, it is quiet, certain. Something inside her moves in response, not wildly, not recklessly, just enough to register. You're leaving, she says, as if reminding herself. Yes. When? Tomorrow. The word feels like a door closing somewhere in the house. She swallows. And you thought to come here the night before. Yes. To what? Test the ruins, to see if they were ruins. She holds his gaze, does not look away. And what do you see? He considers her with an intensity that is almost unbearable. I see a woman who built a life, he says. I see restraint, loyalty, grief. He pauses. And I see something you are trying very hard not to let me see. Her pulse quickens. You're mistaken. Am I? She steps closer now. The movement surprises them both. This house is not a museum, she says. It is not a monument to something unfinished. I know. Do you? Yes. He lowers his voice. That's why it frightens me. She feels the ground shift under her certainty. The wind strikes the windows again, harder this time. Stay for tea, she hears herself say. The invitation hovers between them, fragile and irreversible. He studies her face carefully, as if searching for irony. You just told me not to ask for anything, he says. You didn't. And this isn't anything. No, she says softly. It's only tea, he nods once. Only tea. She turns back to the stove, hands unsteady now despite her effort. The kettle begins to boil in earnest. Steam rises, blurring the air between them. Behind her, she hears him move further into the kitchen, the sound of his hat settling on the table. The quiet exhale of a man who has stepped somewhere he promised himself he would not return. She pours the water. 2 cups. She does not yet know which of them chapter 2 the tea steeps too long. Neither of them remarks on it. She sets the cups on the table and takes the chair opposite him. The hat remains between them like a third presence. He has placed it carefully, brimmed down, as if it might listen. You still take it without sugar, she says. Yes, and lemon. Yes, she slides the thin slice across to him. Their fingers do not touch. The restraint feels deliberate now, almost ceremonial. He watches her sit. You rearranged the room, he says, a little. The table used to be closer to the window. I moved it after. She stops. He nods. He knows the sentence without hearing it finished. After the hospital bed. After the nurses, after the last winter. The tea is bitter. She drinks it anyway. I went to the cemetery, he says. The words land quietly. She keeps her eyes on her cup. I assumed you might. I wasn't sure if that would anger you. It isn't yours to disturb, she says. But it isn't mine to guard. He absorbs that. It's peaceful, he says, where he is. Yes. I stood there longer than I expected. She looks up at him then. Why? He holds her gaze. Because I wanted to see if I felt like an intruder. And did you? Yes. The honesty is unadorned. But not in the way I feared, he adds, not as a rival. No, she says. That would be absurd. Yes, he turns the cup slowly in his hands. I felt like someone arriving after the story had ended. She studies him. It ended for him, she says. Not for me. I know. You don't. The words are sharper than she intends. She softens them with a breath. You don't know what it is to stay, she says more quietly, to watch someone diminish inch by inch, to love them in smaller and smaller portions. He does not interrupt. It is not dramatic, she continues. There is no grand sacrifice, just repetition, medication schedules, quiet compromises. You tell yourself you are strong. You are not strong. You are simply present. He lowers his eyes. I wasn't present, he says. No. The acknowledgement settles between them without accusation. I thought about writing to you when he first got sick, he says. Why? I don't know. He pauses. That's not true. I wanted to offer help. Would you have come? Yes. And what would that have done? He does not answer. She leans back in her chair. You were not absent, she says. You were elsewhere. That sounds generous. It isn't. It's factual. The clock continues its measured ticking. The house seems to listen. I used to imagine, he says slowly, that if you ever needed me, you would call. She almost smiles. You always did imagine yourself indispensable. He accepts the rebuke. Yes. A draft slips under the back door. The candle near the sink flickers. Tell me something honest, he says. She stiffens slightly. I've been honest. Something dangerous. Her gaze sharpens. Dangerous to whom? To us. There it is again, that word. Where? She folds her hands in her lap to still them. Go on. He studies her face as if committing it to memory. Did you ever regret it? He asks. The question does not need clarification. She looks down at the table, at the faint scratch near the center where a plate once slipped. Yes, she says. He exhales. But not in the way you hope. He waits. I regretted hurting you, she continues. I regretted the cruelty of clarity. She lifts her eyes to his. I did not regret staying. He absorbs that slowly. I thought, he says, that perhaps you chose safety. She almost laughs. You have never understood safety. Then explain it to me. It isn't safety, she says. It is consequence. The word hangs between them. When you love someone long enough, she says, your life grows around them, roots entangle. To tear yourself free is not romantic. It is violent. And you chose not to be violent. Yes, even for happiness. She studies him carefully. You speak as if happiness were guaranteed. He does not respond immediately. It felt inevitable, he says at last. She shakes her head. You were always intoxicated by inevitability. And you weren't? No, she says quietly. I was terrified of it. He leans back, considering her as if seeing a piece of the past rearrange itself. You think I would have left, she says. He does not deny it. I don't know, he says, but I feared you might. She feels the truth of that. And so you left first, she says. Yes, there it is, the small, unheroic confession. The tea has gone cold. Neither of them moves to refill it. I wasn't brave, he says. No, I thought I was. I know, he meets her gaze. And you? He asks, were you brave? She considers the question with care. No, she says. And I was disciplined. The difference settles heavily. A car passes outside, headlights briefly sweeping across the ceiling. For a moment, they are illuminated as if on a stage. Then darkness again. Why did you never have children? He asks softly. She stiffens. That's an ungenerous question. I don't mean it to be. She hesitates. We tried, she says finally. The words are simple. The history behind them is not. He closes his eyes briefly. I didn't know. There are many things you didn't know. Yes, she studies his face, searching for pity. She finds none, only grief. I would have been a terrible father, he says quietly. You don't know that. Yes, he says. I do. Silence again. But this one is gentler, less barbed. The wind outside has stilled. Where will you go tomorrow, she asks. Italy for a while. She nods. You always liked the idea of Italy. I like the idea of starting where no one expects anything of me. She looks at him steadily. I never expected anything of you. That isn't true. It is, he shakes his head. You expected me to be better than I was. That is not expectation, she says. That is hope. He absorbs that as if it costs him something. And now, he asks, now what? Do you hope anything of me? The question feels more intimate than touch. She considers him carefully. The lines at his mouth, the silver in his hair, the fatigue he carries like a second coat. I hope, she says slowly, that you learn to live without needing to be forgiven. He studies her. That sounds like absolution. It isn't. Then what is it? It's freedom, she says. He looks down at his hands. I don't know how to do that, he admits. I know. A long pause follows. He rises from his chair abruptly, restless. He moves to the window, looking out at the dark garden. I thought, he says, back turned to her now, that if I saw you and felt nothing, I would be relieved. And if you felt everything, he does not answer immediately, then I would know I've wasted 20 years pretending otherwise. She stands as well, though she does not approach him. Have you? She asks. Yes. The word is quiet. Devastating. She feels the old pull then, not youthful, not reckless. Something deeper, recognition. You mistake endurance for waste, she says. He turns to face her. And you mistake restraint for virtue. The words strike cleanly. They stand on opposite sides of the room now. The distance feels deliberate, necessary. You're angry, she says. Yes. At me? At myself? She nods. That's safer. He almost smiles. You still analyze everything, and you still resist it. He walks back toward the table, but stops halfway, as if crossing an invisible boundary. If I asked you, he begins, then stops. She waits. If I asked you to come with me tomorrow, he says carefully, what would you say? Her breath catches, but her face remains composed. I would say no without hesitation. He nods. The answer wounds, but it does not surprise him. And if I asked you to visit, he continues, she hesitates this time, that would be unwise. Unwise, he repeats softly. Yes, because you feel nothing. She meets his eyes. Because I feel too much. The confession hangs between them, fragile and dangerous. He takes a step toward her, then another. She does not retreat. Ah, the air feels charged now, like the moment before lightning. Is it still there? He asks. She does not pretend to misunderstand. Yes, she says. The word is barely audible. He closes his eyes as if struck. For you too? He whispers. Yes, the room seems to contract around them. He is close enough now that she can see the faint tremor in his hand. He does not reach for her. I don't want to ruin you, he says. You couldn't, she replies. That's not true. No, she says quietly. It isn't. They stand there, the space between them narrower than it has been in decades. If we touch, he says, voice low, we will not be able to pretend. I know, and tomorrow I will still leave. Yes, and you will still stay. Yes, the inevitability of it settles like a verdict. He lifts his hand slightly as if testing the air. She feels the movement before she sees it. And Daniel, she says, it is both warning and plea. He stops. I needed to know, he says, almost to himself. And now you do, yes. He lets his hand fall back to his side. The restraint is more intimate than contact would have been. After a moment, he steps back. The distance reasserts itself. I should go, he says. She nods, though her body feels unwilling. He picks up his hat from the table, holds it again like something fragile. At the door, he pauses. If I write, he says, not turning around, will you answer? She considers the question with excruciating care. Yes, she says. It is not forgiveness. It is not promise. It is something more dangerous. He nods once, accepting it. Then he opens the door. Cold air rushes in. He steps out into the night without looking back. She stands where he left her, listening to his footsteps fade down the path. When the gate clicks shut, the sound is final. Only then does she allow herself to press her hand against her mouth to keep from calling him back. Chapter 3, she does not sleep. The house settles around her in small, familiar sounds. Pipes cooling, wood adjusting to the night air. Each noise carries the echo of habit. She has lived inside these rhythms for years. They have never felt unstable until now. She leaves the bed before dawn. The sheets remain undisturbed on his side. They have been undisturbed for a long time. That absence once felt sacred. This morning it feels like a question. In the kitchen, she stands at the window with a cup of coffee she does not drink. The garden is pale with frost. The gate at the end of the path is closed. The latch rests where it always rests. He will already be awake. She knows his habits, early rising, packing at the last minute. Preference for departure before the city fully opens its eyes. She tries not to imagine him folding shirts into a suitcase, not to picture the precise way he aligns his shoes, as if order might compensate for what he cannot control. The clock reads 6:20. His train leaves at 7:10. She sets the cup down. This is foolishness, she tells herself. The word has no weight. She moves through the house slowly, touching small surfaces as she passes. The back of a chair, the edge of the mantel. Objects that have witnessed her discipline. Objects that do not protest. In the hallway, she pauses at the mirror. The woman looking back at her is composed. Pale, perhaps, but composed. You are not a girl, she says aloud. The sound of her own voice startles her. No, she is not a girl. She is a widow. A woman with a name etched into stone at the cemetery on the hill. A woman who chose consequence over combustion. She reaches for her coat. Outside, the air is sharp and clean. The sky has not yet committed to morning. The street is nearly empty. A newspaper van idles at the corner. She walks quickly, not allowing herself to calculate. Halfway down the block, she stops. This is absurd. He is leaving. That is what he came to say. The story has already concluded. But the word yes still vibrates in her chest. Because I feel too much, she resumes walking. The station sits at the edge of town, modest and unadorned, a single platform. A small waiting room with a wooden bench. She has not been here in years. He stands near the far end, hat in hand, as if waiting for a verdict instead of a train. He sees her almost immediately. The recognition moves across his face without disguise, not triumph, not surprise. Something closer to relief. She slows as she approaches. I told myself you wouldn't come, he says. I told myself the same. They stand facing each other in the thin morning light, breath visible in small clouds. You're early, she says. So are you. A faint smile passes between them. It does not linger. I won't ask you to change your mind, he says. Good. I won't ask you to come with me, she nods. But I am glad you're here. The simplicity of it steadies her. The platform is nearly empty. A woman at the far bench reads a paperback. A young man checks his watch repeatedly. No one pays them attention. I almost didn't, she says. I know. He studies her face. You look different in the morning, he says. How? Less defended. She considers that. I didn't have time to construct myself, she replies. That's when you're most honest. She looks away briefly. The tracks hum faintly in the distance. Not yet the train, just anticipation. I thought about what you said, he begins. Which part? About restraint. She waits. You think it's virtue, he says. I think it's fear. She meets his eyes. And which of us is right, both? The answer surprises her. He steps a little closer, but not enough to touch. I was afraid of losing you, he says, so I left before you could leave me. She absorbs that. I was afraid of destroying everything, she says. So I stayed where I was. The morning air sharpens around them. We were not brave, he says. No, we were not cowards either. No, the train horn sounds faintly in the distance. There it is. He closes his eyes briefly, as if registering the sound physically. I don't want this to be another clean exit, he says. She feels the old accusation in the words, though they are gently spoken. It won't be, she replies. How do you know? Because I came. The truth of that steadies them both. The train begins to approach, a low vibration in the rails. He looks at her as if committing the lines of her face to memory. If I write, he says, I won't write about the past. She tilts her head slightly. No, I'll write about where I am, what I see, what I fail at, a pause. I'll write honestly. She considers that. And if I answer, she says, I won't write about what might have been. Good. I'll write about what is. The train pulls into the station with a rush of wind and metal. Doors slide open. A conductor steps down. This is the moment. He does not move immediately. She feels the space between them contract. Daniel, she says quietly, yes. If you are looking for absolution, you won't find it in idly. A faint smile touches his mouth. I know. If you are looking for reinvention, you might. And if I am looking for you, her breath catches. You will find me here, she says, not waiting, not suspended, living. He studies her carefully. That may be the cruelest thing you've ever said. It's the kindest. The conductor calls out the final boarding. He reaches out then, not to claim, not to persuade, just to touch her hand. The contact is brief, warm, electric in its restraint. She does not pull away. For a moment, the platform, the train, the years between them dissolve into the simple fact of skin against skin. Then he releases her. I loved you, he says. The past tense lands deliberately. She holds his gaze. I know. A beat. I love you, he adds, present tense. The words settle between them, neither demand nor apology. She inhales slowly. I know, she says again. It is not evasion. It is acknowledgement. The conductor calls once more. He steps back. This isn't the end, he says. No, she replies. It isn't. He boards the train without looking back. The doors close with a soft mechanical sigh. She stands on the platform as it pulls away, watching his reflection flicker past the windows until it disappears. The sound fades, the tracks fall silent. Only then does she notice that her hand, the one he touched, is trembling. She presses it against her coat to still it. Around her, the morning resumes its ordinary shape. The woman with the paperback rises. The young man boards a different carriage. The station empties. She remains a moment longer. Then she turns and walks home. The frost has begun to melt. Inside the house, the clock continues its steady ticking. On the kitchen table, 2 cups from the night before still sit side by side. A faint ring of tea stains the wood. She does not wash them, not yet. Instead, she takes a sheet of paper from the drawer near the sink. She sits at the table where he rested his hands. For a long time she does not write. Then, carefully, she begins. Daniel, the word looks fragile on the page. She pauses, listening to the quiet house. Outside, the wind begins to rise again. She lowers her pen and writes the next line. I am not finished. Chapter 4, she does not send the letter, not that day, not the next. It remains on the kitchen table, folded once, his name visible in her hand. She passes it repeatedly. Each time she considers sealing it, each time she resists. The house has shifted, not visibly. The furniture stands where it always has. The garden waits beyond the glass. But something internal has altered, like a door unlatched somewhere deep in the walls. On the third morning, an envelope appears in her mailbox. The handwriting is unmistakable, slightly slanted, deliberate, as if each word has been weighed before it was allowed to exist. She stands on the front step longer than necessary. This is foolishness, she tells herself again. Inside, she does not open it immediately. She sets it on the table beside her own unfinished letter. Two pieces of paper facing one another like restrained adversaries. Finally, she sits. The paper inside is thin, hotel stationery. He has written in ink, Eleanor, I promise not to write about the past. I will keep that promise. Rome is loud in a way that feels merciful. No one here expects me to be coherent. I walk for hours. I eat standing up. I listen to languages I cannot follow. It is a relief. You told me to learn to live without needing forgiveness. I am trying to understand what that means. There is a church near my hotel. I went inside yesterday. Not to pray. I have never known how. I sat, it was quiet. I thought about presence, about what you said. That strength is not drama, it is repetition. I do not know yet how to repeat anything without reaching for you. I will write again in a week, unless you ask me not to. Daniel, she reads it twice. No declarations, no pleas. The restraint feels intentional. It unsettles her more than longing would have. She folds the letter carefully and places it back in its envelope. Her own letter waits beside it. Daniel, I am not finished. That is all she has written. She studies the sentence now. It feels adolescent, incomplete. She takes a pen and continues. I am not finished, but I am not beginning either. That is the difficulty. You mistake movement for courage. Sometimes stillness requires more. The house is quiet. I find myself listening for sounds that are not here. She stops. This is dangerous terrain. She crosses out the last line. Instead, she writes, the garden needs tending. I have neglected it. Perhaps that is where I will begin. It is safer. She folds the letter before she can revise further. At the post office, her hands are steady. When she drops the envelope into the slot, the sound it makes is small, irreversible. The days reorganize themselves around waiting. She resents this. She has not waited for anyone in years. After her husband died, she disciplined herself against anticipation. Anticipation is a form of dependency. Dependency invites fracture. Now she finds herself listening for the mail truck. It arrives at 11:15 each morning. On the fifth day, another envelope. Eleanor, stillness may require courage, but it also requires an audience. Rome is beautiful in ways that feel almost irresponsible. There are ruins here that have outlived entire civilizations. It makes our private catastrophes seem modest. I walked past the river tonight. I imagined you beside me, not as you were. As you are, you say you are not beginning. I am not certain that is true. Tell me about the garden. Daniel, she sits at the table for a long time after reading. An audience. The word unsettles her. She does not want to be the stage upon which he rehearses reinvention. And yet, she goes into the garden that afternoon. The soil is stiff from neglect. The rose bushes have grown wild, branches tangling into one another without direction. She kneels despite the cold and begins cutting back what is dead. The work is physical, precise. Her hands ache. Good. She trims slowly, considering each stem before she cuts. It is not unlike conversation. Remove too much and the structure weakens. Remove too little and rot spreads. By dusk, a small order has emerged. Inside, she writes again. Daniel, the garden has not forgiven me for ignoring it. The roses are defiant. I had to cut more than I expected. You asked what you are repeating. Perhaps repetition is not about reaching for someone. Perhaps it is about returning to yourself without embellishment. I do not want to be your audience. I want to be your correspondent. There is a difference. Eleanor, she hesitates before sealing it. Then she does. The letters settle into rhythm. Once a week. Sometimes twice. He writes about churches and narrow streets, about a cafe owner who insists on correcting his pronunciation. He writes about the relief of anonymity, about waking without a schedule. He does not write about loneliness. She notices. She writes about the garden's slow recovery, about neighbors she has avoided for too long, about small domestic victories, a repaired hinge, a cleared attic shelf. She does not write about the tremor in her hand when she reads his name. Weeks pass. The distance between them feels both immense and strangely permeable. Ink travels faster than memory. One afternoon, a thicker envelope arrives. She feels the difference immediately. Inside is a photograph. He stands beside the river, late afternoon light striking his face. He looks older than he did on the platform, less defended. On the back, he has written, "You said you would not write about what might have been. I am keeping that boundary, but I am coming home in the spring. If that is unwelcome, tell me now." She sits very still. Spring, it is January. The word feels both distant and imminent. She moves to the window. The garden is skeletal but no longer abandoned. Coming home. The phrase reverberates. Home to what? To whom? She returns to the table and turns the photograph over again, studies the line of his mouth, the steadiness in his eyes. This is not the man who stood in her kitchen months ago seeking verdict. This is a man mid-construction. She recognizes the danger in that. She begins to write. Daniel, spring is not a small promise. If you return, do not return for reckoning. Return because you have learned to stand where you are without rehearsal. I will not be a test. I will not be a refuge. If you come, come as yourself. She pauses. The next line resists her. After a long moment, she writes, I cannot promise to be unchanged. She reads the sentence several times. It feels honest. She seals the envelope. February arrives quietly. Snow once, then rain. The letters continue, though something has shifted. The cadence is steadier, less fevered. He writes less about Rome, more about himself. Failures he once disguised as ambition. Moments of impatience that cost him intimacy. She writes less about the garden, more about her own compromises, the way she made herself smaller to preserve equilibrium. The correspondence deepens without spectacle. Then, one evening in late March, her phone rings. She stares at it as if it has broken an unspoken rule. They have not called. They agreed without speaking it. Ink first, voice later. She lets it ring twice, 3 times. On the 4th, she answers. Eleanor, silence. Then his breath. I'm at the airport, he says. Her pulse steadies unnaturally. And you said spring, she replies. It is spring. Technically, a faint exhale, almost laughter. I wanted to hear your voice before I saw your face, he says. She closes her eyes briefly. Why? Because I need to know if I'm romanticizing you. And I'm not. The honesty disarms her. And you're certain? Yes. A pause. And you? He asks. Are you romanticizing me? She considers the question carefully. No, she says. I am preparing. For what? She looks around the kitchen, the table, the 2 chairs facing one another. For difficulty, she says. The word lands gently. I don't want to make your life difficult, he says. You already have. He absorbs that without protest. I land in 40 minutes, he says. She feels the timeline compress. I won't meet you there, she says. I didn't expect you to. I need to see you arrive without anticipation. I understand. A pause. Eleanor, he says quietly. Yes. If this ends differently than before, it will, she says. He falls silent. How? He asks. I don't know yet, she replies. She hears the boarding announcement in the background. I have to go, he says. Yes. Another pause. Heavy. Charged. Don't disappear, he says. She thinks of the train platform months ago, of his hand in hers, of the years between. I won't, she says. The line goes dead. She stands alone in the kitchen, phone still in her hand. Outside, the first true warmth of spring touches the garden. In 40 minutes, he will land. In a few hours, he will stand somewhere within this town. The house feels too small. She walks to the back door and steps into the garden. The roses are beginning to bud. She touches one carefully. I am not finished, she says aloud. This time it does not sound like defiance. It sounds like promise.